Hi, I'm Tara and welcome to another Crafting with Curly Cues video. Today I am going to step way outside of my comfort zone and make a mixed media mini canvas. And what inspired me for this was the Simon Says Stamp Monday Challenge, where it wanted you to use some sort of different kind of paper. So I chose to get out some tissue paper that I had laying around for gift wrapping and see what I could come up with. And I don't typically do mixed media. It's something that I think is really beautiful, but it just kind of intimidates me because there's so many parts and pieces going on. But I wanted to give it a try today. And so I started with this little 4x4 canvas, and I've just got some distress inks, and I'm just gonna lay some color down here. I started with something I'm comfortable with, distress inks, and then I'm going to move into the things that are less comfortable. So this is some Stormy Sky, and I'm just laying down a base coat here. I'm going to be using some of the pieces from the July Simon Says Stamp card kit, which is all a nautical theme. So I'm basically creating like a little ocean and nighttime sky look here. So now I've got some Mermaid Lagoon, and I'm just going in on the bottom of that canvas and putting some of that over the top of that stormy sky. By the time I'm done, you can't really see the stormy sky, but I think that it really gave a good base to lay these other colors on top of. I'm trying to make sure that the edges of the canvas are colored too. I don't want it to appear unfinished, but my fingers kept rubbing the ink off of the sides, so you know, I did what I could. So this is chipped sapphire, and this is going to create that darker look up at the top here. I'm going to use the Mermaid Lagoon part as the water, and then the chipped sapphire is going to be the sky part for the nighttime. And honestly, when I started this, I had some tissue paper in like an aqua color and gold, and that was really where I started. So I was like, well, it wants me to use a different kind of paper, so I'll start with this. And so I just kind of grabbed all the supplies in my craft room that I thought I could maybe do some mixed media out of based on some of the videos that I've watched, and just kind of went from there. So this is my spritzer, and this water has some perfect pearls in it. You can see there that it's got that shimmer, so you just put a little bit of perfect pearls in with your water, and then when you put it on everything, it's just going to add that little bit of shimmer there. So I'm just doing that trick where I just flop some of that water on top of the distress inks there in the droplets so that it can wick away the water and create those pretty bleach spots. But because that perfect pearls is in it, it's going to create shimmery white spots. So it was very pretty. I was impressed with the way that it turned out. I'd never actually done this with the perfect pearls water. I've painted with it, but I'd never done the splotches. So you can see when I dab that off that it really made a difference there. And then I just took my paper towel and daubed that off, and then I used my heat tool and dried that a little bit. And then what I am doing is going back over the top of that with a little bit more ink, because I felt like those white spots were actually a little bit too pronounced, so I didn't want it to be quite so white there. So what I'm doing is kind of putting some of that Mermaid Lagoon and chipped sapphire back over the top, and then I occasionally, you can see I pick it up and kind of look at it, because I don't want to cover up all the shimmer. I just want to dampen it a little bit, if you will. So now I've got this page of vintage text, and this is actually from the February Simon Says Stamp card kit, and I just hadn't used it yet, partially because it makes me actually physically hurt to cut into this page of book. I'm a book lover, and this makes me sad, but that's what it's there for, so I did it. And I used that little sailboat die that came with the July Simon Says Stamp card kit, and I cut a little sailboat out of that book text. So this is one of the types of paper that's new for me, is this book text. And then here's some of that gold tissue paper. So this is literally just what you buy to wrap a present in. In fact, I wrapped somebody's present in it, and this is what I had left over. So I cut one of those sailboats out of that as well. And you can see I'm just going to kind of mix and match so that my sailboats aren't all exactly the same. And then here is some of that kind of aqua tissue paper that I had that came in the same pack. And what I'm doing right now is just kind of, like I said, I didn't really have a plan, so I'm kind of trying to figure out like what I wanted to do with that tissue paper. I thought maybe I was going to put a gold layer behind some waves, but then I decided that I really liked the way that the ink turned out on the canvas, so I wanted that to stay there. So I'm only going to use this teal color. And I pulled out the stamp set that came with the July card kit. It's called Sailing, and it's got this really pretty kind of geometric wave pattern here. So I'm going to take some Sukaneko Brilliance Galaxy Gold. It's a pretty metallic gold ink, and ink up that wave. And I'm going to stamp that onto this piece of tissue paper. a few times and just kind of create a little wave pattern. Now, I wasn't sure what was going to happen when I put this tissue paper on the canvas because it's not white. I've seen this done with white tissue paper a lot where you stamp on it and then you put it on, and it's really cool because you can't actually see the tissue paper. You can just see the stamping, but because this tissue paper was blue, I didn't know what was going to happen. So this is all just me kind of guessing here, like what's going to happen, but it turns out really pretty. So that gold is nice and shimmery on that tissue paper, and then I'm just going to kind of cut those waves out. And the bottom I don't worry about, but the top I actually do cut right along the stamp so that I don't have any extra tissue paper up at the top of there. So now that that's all cut out, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I spaced it right, that I have enough stamping, and that I like how that's going to look on there. And I'm thinking that looks pretty neat. I do like having a little bit of that Mermaid Lagoon peeking out the top. And so now I'm going to take this. This is Liquitex Matte Gel. And when I bought this, I can't even remember what I bought it for, but what I use it for mostly is essentially just like Mod Podge. I kind of use it for doing decoupage stuff. I think what it's intended to be for is like acrylic painting, something about mixing it with your paints or laying down a surface. I know that most people would use something like a gesso or something for this, but I don't have any of that. So this seemed to work pretty well. I'm just taking that tissue paper that's now all wet with that glue there, and just sticking it on top of my canvas. And you can see that when I do get it wet and I start pushing it, it does turn pretty transparent. Like you can still see the pattern of the Distress ink through the tissue paper. So I was really excited about that because I really wanted to kind of keep that look that I'd had there. But then you can also see that really subtle gold wave stamp that I put on the top. So far, I'm thinking this little mixed media experiment's going pretty darn well. I think one of the great things about mixed media is that it's pretty forgiving because you just keep layering and layering and layering. So I guess like if I didn't like it, I could have just stuck something right on top of it there. But it turned out pretty well. So now I'm kind of just going to lay some stuff on there and see formatting wise what I'm looking at. Originally, I was wanting to only do one sailboat, but then I decided when I kind of got stuff on there that wasn't quite enough. I'm going to end up putting them both on there. So these little sails, that's out of that text print, I'm just using my finger and dabbing that gold ink that I stamped the waves in and just kind of distressing the edges of these little paper sails. These little pieces are so tiny and fragile. When I started putting the glue on the back, it was like, I was afraid I was going to just disintegrate everything. But I definitely got inky. I got inky fingers from this project. So mixed media is messy. I learned that. I mean, stamping's messy anyway, but this was pretty like, I just, threw caution to the wind. I'm like, my finger will work just as well as a dauber, right? So you can see how I'm going to kind of use both of those little sailboats there. And I really kind of like the way that the gold in the text looks against the blue backgrounds there. And so now I'm taking this really pretty scripty sail away sentiment. And I will tell you guys that originally I tried to emboss this directly onto the canvas. And I tried a little trick where I tried to stabilize the back because the way that the wooden canvas is there's nothing behind the middle of it. There's only a frame behind, so I couldn't get enough pressure to get my image to stamp. So I ended up just embossing this with some gold Recollections detail embossing powder right on some of that blue tissue paper that I had used earlier. And this is because I had already seen that it goes on pretty transparent. So I thought maybe this would be a way to get that gold embossing on there. So that turned out beautifully. I was really pleased with the embossing on the tissue paper and how well that went. And so now I'm just going to cut that out, and I'm just kind of leaving a little bit of a trim around those words, but I'm trying to get rid of as much of that tissue paper as I can because I don't actually want the tissue paper to show. I just want the sentiment to show there. So now I've got that all cut out, and I'm going to take some of this Heidi Swap. This is a Color Shine spray, and so it's the tinsel color, and it looks really, really dark in the bottle, but when you spritz it, it's actually pretty translucent. It's just kind of got some charcoal sparkles in it. And so instead of spraying it, I'm just taking the nozzle out and I'm just kind of flicking the end on the canvas. And I'm wanting to add a little bit more texture and color here. And that didn't actually add quite as much color as I wanted. Once I got it on there and I got it all heat set with my heat tool, I realized that it's a lot more translucent than I thought that it was going to be. So what I did was I took that chipped sapphire distress ink and I just smushed some of that on my glass craft mat. This is part of why I love my glass craft mat, is like I don't have to get anything else out. I'm just like, oh, I'll just smush it on there. And I spritzed a couple spritzes of plain water, not the pearly water, just plain water, and put my paintbrush in there, and now I'm just flicking that really dark chipped sapphire ink onto the canvas. And I'm really liking the addition of these dots. And what I really wanted to do was add some opaque white dots also, but I dug through all my supplies and it turns out I don't have any product that would allow me to do that. So I'm going to have to look into that for next time. So now that I've got the background complete, I'm going to go ahead and put some of that matte gel on the back of my sentiment and adhere that to the top of the canvas. And you can see once I start pushing that down on there, that tissue paper kind of just disappears. So I was, again, really pleased with the way that this was working, and, you know, really positively influenced here. I wasn't sure how well this was going to work, but I do like the way that that sentiment went on there, and it looks like it's just embossed right on that canvas, but it's not. So this is a great illusion. I'm pretty excited to try it with some different colors of tissue paper and get some white tissue paper and see what kind of possibilities there are for that. So now I'm going to put down those little sailboats, and this little piece is the middle rig of the sailboat. And when I got the tissue paper wet, it started curling up on itself and it just became like so fragile. It was ridiculous. So you're actually going to see here in a minute that I rip the mast of the sailboat, I guess it is. But I was able to just kind of place it right there where it was supposed to go. And it, you can't even tell, but I was like, oh no, see right there, I ripped it. Oh no. But I'm just putting it back because my fingers were sticking to everything. I couldn't quite get it to go. And I'm trying to be careful because the more glue I apply directly on the top, the more those distress inks in the background react with that liquid and move around, and I don't want them to be moving all over the place. So I'm trying to avoid having to put my gluey paintbrush right onto the canvas. I want to be able to do everything off the canvas and then just stick it right on there. So now here's those little sails out of that text paper. This is one of those projects that was really fun to watch come together because all the pieces are so, there's so many layers going on that every layer kind of added a new level of excitement to the project as a whole. So it was really kind of fun to do. I don't know that this is going to be my new norm, but it's definitely something that I will branch out and do more often. You can see I stuck the other sailboat on there and used the exact same process. And so now for a final step, I've got this confetti stencil by Heidi Swapp. It's one of my favorites. I don't do this embossing paste thing very often, but when I do, I tend to go for this stencil right here. And I've got some silver embossing paste. I think the company is Art Co. I showed you the lid there. It came in like a little 3-pack with a black one and a white one. I've had them forever because, again, I barely ever do this technique. I don't know why. I should do it more often. It's really cool. But I wanted to add some silver stars to the sky here just to kind of enhance that night sky that I was going for and fill in some of this blank space that was left. And since I don't have any gold embossing paste, I was like, I'm just going to go with the metallic silver and kind of add one more element of color to this little scene that I have going on here. And I think that it ended up turning out really cool. I really liked the way that it went on there. So this is probably the trickiest part, is trying to hold my stencil in place because it's a canvas. So I can't really like use my Post-it tape to tape anything down. So I'm just trying to figure out, and I'm wanting one more star on the side, but I'm trying to find one that's clean enough that I can get it in there without messing anything else up when I set it down. So I found my one more star there, and I'm just adding that final one as a little extra touch, and then my canvas will be all set and I can let it dry. So thank you so much for joining me at my first little venture into different kinds of paper and mixed media. I think that it turned out pretty darn good for a first shot. So Let me know what you think in the comments, and make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe. I have linked here for you a couple different videos that I've done. I've got one that's a nice, clean, and simple 1-layer card, and one that is a fabulous glitzy shaker card. So go ahead and check those out. And give me that thumbs up if you like what you're seeing. And I would love for you to join me over at my blog. I've got a whole bunch of different stuff going on. It's curlycues.blogspot.com. You can also find me over on Facebook. I am on Pinterest and I'm on Instagram. And I've listed all the supplies on my blog.